Good afternoon.
Jim Allister, good to have you on the programme this afternoon. I mean, what did you make of this, and what did you make of what Dan Owens had to say, not only there but to you and to other MPs as part of his attempts to press MPs for change?
Well, let's be very clear. This is not an anomaly of the Windsor framework. This is a direct and deliberate consequence of the Windsor framework, because under the Windsor framework, Northern Ireland is subject to the EU's customs code, and it's because of that we're subject to EU customs rules. And it's because of that we are then, for these purposes, regarded as EU territory, and therefore when you fly within the EU, for example, from Northern Ireland to Spain, according to their approach, then you are not entitled to duty-free. And that, of course, is a deliberate, conscious determination of the Windsor framework as an illustration that we are not any longer a full part of the United Kingdom, but are treated as EU territory. And it gives the lie to the pretense about the protocol or the Windsor framework that we still remain within the EU's customs zone. If we remained wholly within the EU's customs zone, then we would have the same advantages of anyone flying from Edinburgh or Cardiff. We would have duty-free access. So it's directly because of the constitutional impingement of the Windsor framework and are treating us as EU territory that we're denied the benefits that would come to everyone else in the United Kingdom of duty-free.
Do you think, Jim Allister, enough people know about this, understand this? And I ask that, I've been in queues at the airport in Spain, and people have gone to buy whatever it is they're after, and the person at the counter scans the boarding pass and goes, "Oh, you're going to Belfast? No, sorry, that's not duty free. You can't have that." So, to me, I've seen people firsthand be caught out by this.
Yes, indeed, and I get regular reports of people flying to and from the continent who experience that, and it becomes as a great surprise to them. And that, of course, is in part because the government and others have been very anxious to cover the truth of the consequences, particularly the constitutional consequences of the Windsor framework. But it is, as I've said, because of the application of the EU's customs code to Northern Ireland and our treatment as EU territory. And it also has other knock-on effects. For example, aircraft attendants get commission on duty-free. And that means that if you want to be an aircraft attendant, a hostess, you're more likely to base yourself in Manchester than you will in Belfast, because in Manchester you can earn the commission which you can't earn because you don't have duty-free out of Belfast. It cuts every way.
Johnny in East Belfast is saying this is a joke. We were sold a raw deal.
Oh, he's absolutely right. And I would have to say this. I think it's regrettable that Simon has fallen hook, line and sinker for the government propaganda.
Well, I didn't think you would agree with Simon, but yeah, do continue.
Of the supposed access of dual market access. Dual market access is a fiction and a nonsense for this very simple reason. Whereas you might be able to sell your manufactured goods into the EU, in order to manufacture them, you have to bring your raw materials from GB and you have to pass them through a fully fledged international customs border, thus making them more expensive and thus negating any supposed advantage that comes from being able to sell to the EU. So, that's just a red herring of no relevance to this debate. Anyone who flies, should be entitled as a British citizen to the same duty-free, whether it's economically a good deal or a bad deal, they should be entitled to the same duty-free as anyone else, irrespective of which UK airport they fly out of. And the fact that they aren't is a vivid illustration of how our position within the United Kingdom has been diminished, and it's all because we are now treated without consent as EU territory, and are subject, of course, in addition to their laws, in hundreds of areas of laws we don't make and can't change.
Yes. Jim?
Well, it's over our fairness and constitutional propriety. And the only answer to this is the removal of the Windsor framework and therefore of the EU's sovereignty over Northern Ireland. This is a direct consequence of their colonial rule in Northern Ireland, whereby it's their rules on duty-free, their rules and customs which apply, rather than the UK rules, of which we are said to still be a part. It's a fundamental political and constitutional issue, which is evidenced by this absurdity, but an absurdity which flows out of the EU's colonial control in Northern Ireland.
But surely this government has other issues to address at the moment, not least the budget in just 2 weeks, and has probably a reluctance to reopen any negotiations with Brussels or reopen any of those those arguments and discussions.
Well, I must make this point. The government was encouraged in that reluctance by the fact that the DUP gave up the battle on the protocol and went back, tail between their legs, back into Stormont and gave up the leverage that we had to force change. I understand it's not going to be easy to change and get rid of the Windsor framework, particularly when some who claim to were against it have given up the battle, but it still is wrong that any part of the United Kingdom should be treated as foreign territory, subject to foreign laws.
Yeah, David, we were talking about duty-free, and he wanted to give another example about Kildare Village, which offers duty-free shopping for non-EU citizens. It says, except for Northern Ireland citizens, if I have an address in GB, I get duty-free, but if my address is in Northern Ireland and I don't, even though I live in the UK, I agree that this needs to be sorted. One big benefit of Brexit cannot be availed of by Northern Ireland citizens. That's from David. Thank you.
Because David is right, we didn't get Brexit. We were left as EU territory, and that's why we don't get duty-free travelling or shopping within the EU.
Jim Allister, isn't that part of the issue here, though, is we will continue to see or to uncover different outcomes as a result of not only Brexit but also the subsequent agreements and now the Windsor framework. There will be further hurdles to probably overcome, and it will always go back to that Brexit debate.
Yeah, the duty-free issue is but one evidence of how Northern Ireland didn't get Brexit, of how we were left under the EU's aegis and control. And that's the fundamental of so many issues. That's why there is an Irish sea border, because we're treated as EU territory. That's why if you want to bring goods or parcels from GB, your own country, into another part of your own country, you're subject to the EU's foreign border requirements. All of that goes back to the fact that Northern Ireland was excluded from Brexit on those critical issues, and in defiance of what the referendum outcome was, that the whole United Kingdom should leave the EU. Yes, these are day and daily manifestations.
Before we wrap up today?
Well, I think it's quite, whether duty-free is a good value or not, it obviously is an income creator for the international airport. And therefore I understand their resentment that if they were anywhere else in the United Kingdom, they would have this income. And of course, income then enables further expansion. And that's very much what we need. But, we'll not get this solved so long as we're a colony of a foreign jurisdiction. Simple as that.